Alrighty, let's give it like a second. Recording has started. All right, are we ready? Cool. So hi everyone. As you know, my name is Kayla Carr, and I am the grants coordinator here at GCAC. If you're familiar with any of our past programs like Neighborhood Arts Connection, Big Ideas, and Project Support for Organizations, Artist Projects was inspired and created from those grants. So starting this year, Project Support was no longer open to individuals and just to nonprofit organizations. And then in response to that change, Artist Projects is kind of like a baby project support where individual artists and groups of artists can apply without the requirement of a fiscal sponsor. So you can come in as an individual, you can have the funds routed to you, and you don't have to rely on that outside organization to put the grant in for you. This program was created in response to our reimagining in 2023, which is where GCAC worked with a consultant, LaShondra Baker, to help facilitate an artist needs survey, roundtables, and discipline-specific focus groups. So we heard a lot about how larger grants are desired, even if it meant a more competitive process. So our hope with this grant is that it encourages more networking, collaboration, and also opportunities for artists to make their dream projects come to fruition. So as Mackenzie said, in round one earlier this year, we received 334 applications and ultimately 49 artists, that's 43 working in various disciplines, and then 6 filmmakers were awarded. So it was a really great round one, and I do expect a lot of traction in round two. So thank you so much for being here today and helping out, learning about the program so you can help answer questions as they come. So to start off, let's talk about how GCAC is funded. We're always transparent about this because it does impact some of the eligibility criteria for our grants, and it also comes from taxpayer dollars. So you'll see the slide at the beginning of most of our grant workshops. It's public information, and you're welcome to explain this to folks who may have some questions about where GCAC receives its funding. The first bullet point is our City of Columbus hotel motel tax, also known as the bed tax. This has been around since the 1970s and is known as one of the best practices in the country as far as arts funding goes. So if you stay in a hotel in Columbus, you'll see that bed tax on your receipt, and you now know that like a small portion of that goes to us and the rest to the city in other ways. And then in 2019, the Columbus Facility Stabilization Fund, some of you may know it as the ticket fee, was implemented. We had 2 different avenues for this funding. So one was from main ticket sales or main ticket fees, and the other from Nationwide Arena. So for example, any tickets that were sold with Nationwide Arena, whether it be a concert or a Blue Jackets game, Nationwide keeps 80% for their facility upkeep, and then GCAC gets that remaining 20%. And we take that 20% and put it towards purposes like capital expenses for cultural institutions, public art, and grants like this one. And then in July of 2019, the City of Columbus Creation, Innovation, and Inclusion Fund came in with a direct allocation for grant funding, as well as the Franklin County Board of Commissioners in October of that same year. So this is our website. You've probably been on it before. It's just gcac.org. Whenever you're sharing information about GCAC and our grant programs, I always recommend to start with the guidelines first. And we have the guidelines for all of our programs available at the beginning of each year, usually in January. You'll head over to our website, which was also just redesigned and relaunched back in December. It's a bit easier to navigate in comparison to the older website that was like blue, yellow, and orange. Some of you might remember that. And at the very top of the screen, you'll see where it says for artists. And when you click on that, another screen will come up that says funding for artists. It's like a drop-down menu. And then you'll also see the GCAC calendar at the top right of the page, and you can click on the calendar to see important dates like grant deadlines and workshops as well. So if we click on for artists, that will take you to funding for artists, and then it'll bring you to this page here. You'll see a list of all of the available grant fellowship, award, and residency opportunities. You can use that bronze bar at the top to sort them. But if you just select all, artist projects is going to be third from the bottom of the
I think Kayla froze. Is everyone else?
I thought it was just my internet, but yeah.
Yeah, so sadly, we're on the first floor of the GCC building, and the internet has had a little bit of funk here. So I told her if it happened to her, I would vamp for a minute. So, I'm sure you've all seen this, but one nice thing about our website is that when you go in that, there's sections, but you can also click to PDF it or click to download it. So some folks I know, like when I do workshops, it's a lot easier to have a paper copy to write on. So we will happily, if you want to stop by, print some for you. Sayuri, for example, is going to speak to a group in a couple of weeks here. And so we're going to have some materials ready at the ready. So we will happily, if anybody is meeting with a group and want any print materials or pens or stickers or those kinds of things, we would be happy to provide that. But it's also nice, just like when you're on your travels, to have either the QR code right to the applications or a printed copy. Just we're artists, so many of us are visual learners. So having that right in front of you is really nice. So I think I see Kayla. Yeah, her eyes are moving.
Am I back? Am I still
You're
showing on
back.
the
You're back,
screen?
baby.
Okay. It didn't freeze on my end, so I was like, I don't know what's happening.
I like, you were taking a dramatic pause, and I was like, that's too dramatic.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Can you see the presentation?
we cannot anymore.
Okay, let's try that again.
Yeah, we'll just have to call IT again.
All right, what about now?
Okay.
Good, okay. And I believe I'm still recording. Yes, okay, so we're still recording. Thank you for being patient with me and the internet. So let's just start again from this page. Once you see funding for artists, we'll go to artist projects, and then that will open a short summary. And you can do that for each of the programs. So it's a really great way to kind of just shop through the grants when you don't have to open up the entire guidelines for them, just to kind of see what you're eligible for, what the deadlines are, and what award amounts look like. Once you've selected one, so in this instance, artist projects, you will click full details at the bottom left, and that will open up the complete guidelines. To the right of that, you can also download a PDF version and print it out if you prefer to work with pen and paper. Once we're at the full guidelines, this is where you'll find all of the information regarding artist projects. So the eligibility criteria for both the applicant and the project is here. You'll see a photo of me as the staff contact, and then you'll see a link to Smart Simple, which is our online application portal. This will always appear in our guidelines as a brown bronze colored button. And then as you scroll down on this page, you will also see the application questions in entirety, as well as information on next steps after acceptance, payment, final reports, publicity agreements, and stuff like that. At the very, very bottom of the guidelines, I did include a frequently asked questions list, and I'm in the process of adding to that. I'm kind of just going through my emails and seeing what people have been asking me most, but there are some questions in there that is a good starting point for anyone who may be interested in this grant. So before we get into the nitty gritty and talk about the guidelines, does anyone have any questions about how to find the guidelines or how to navigate our website? No? Okay. So the grant summary. The purpose of this grant is to support artist creation in all disciplines and bring original artist-led projects to life. So I have original and artist-led underlined in my notes because artists from start to finish, the projects must be led by the artist. So that's the original design of the project, the selection of artists involved, the creation of the artwork itself, disseminating it to the public, marketing the project. Everything is the responsibility of the artist or the group of artists that are applying. The applicant must be an individual working artist as demonstrated by a resume or artist portfolio or a body of work. Groups are welcome to apply, but one individual will apply on behalf of the group. So we typically recommend whoever's best at communication and who checks their email most frequently, just because they're who is going to be accepting the grant if they're awarded, who I'm going to be emailing for any communications, and also who will be recognized in our press release. So they'll have the responsibility of being the applicant if you're working as a group. And this grant is also competitive, so it will be reviewed and scored by the public as part of the community grant making process. Some of you were involved in that in round one. It's a new process to GCAC, and I will talk about it a little bit more in the following slides. So round two opens on August 1st and closes on August 30th at 5 p.m. And we say 5 p.m. because that's when we are out of office and I won't be here to help with any technical support that might go wrong at the time of submitting. So I try to hang out about 10-15 minutes after 5, but past that it would be considered late, and unfortunately I won't be able to accept late applications. So August 1st, 2024, that's when it opens, and August 30th, 2024 is when it closes.
We've all been there, like, for whatever reason, it's always like the hour before a deadline is when like the internet goes out, there's a power outage, like some major issue. So like as you're talking to people, it's just like college, like submit as early as you can, as early as you're comfortable, just because like you just never know when technology is going to fail you like it did Kayla earlier. And it's always the most inopportune time. So just encourage folks. It's an equity issue that we just don't accept late applications, because if we do it for one, we'd have to do it for everyone, and then there'd be no deadlines. So people have the opportunity, you can submit early, and I just really encourage that.
Yeah, for sure. And if you submit early too, and then think back, oh, I wanted to include this, then you'll have time to reach out to me and I can move your application back into draft status so that you can fix anything. But if you need to make edits after that 5 p.m. deadline, unfortunately, we can't do that. So let's talk about the award amount. So artists are able to request up to $10,000. And multiple awards will be given. And then filmmakers specifically can request up to $25,000. We do have a larger budget specifically for film, simply because we recognize that the project budget for film is typically more expensive in comparison to other disciplines. Just when you think about all the people that are incorporated to produce a film, the equipment needed, the locations, a film typically also has production behind it. However, the filmmaker does not have to request $25,000. That's just the max amount that they can request. And then if a filmmaker has a film with a budget over $25,000, in round two, they will also be asked to include their additional sources of income. So as mentioned earlier, in round one, we awarded a total of $562,005. So these amounts are all or nothing. So if someone requests 10,000, they're either going to be getting 10,000, but not any more or any less. The funds can be used for artist fees. This is to pay yourself as the project lead or to pay other artists that are involved in the project. You can use the funds on materials, supplies, space rentals, insurance, lifts, ladders, projections, marketing, print materials. Realistically, it could be anything that you need in order to make this project happen. And you'll include that in your budget and estimate those costs based on your research. So tentative plans are okay. It doesn't have to be exact amounts, but however close you can get it to fit that in your budget will help you along the way, but also help us see how you're allocating the funds for your project. In the budget section of your application, you will also enter a line for each income source. It's not required to have an income source outside of grant funds. However, any income that's generated from ticket or merch sales, sponsorships, or maybe you have a donation, all of that should be invested back into your project budget. So if your project has a budget that's larger, you'll have to include some detail in terms of sources of income, but it's not a requirement. Does that make sense?
This came up a few times in round one. I will say, like, if someone had a project, someone was requesting 10,000 and their project expense budget, this is how much it costs, was like 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, and they included no other income. The reviewers were like, that's great. If we give them 10, are they going to be able to do this project that they say is going to cost 40,000? So it's okay if your project exceeds your request, as long as you have like some realistic sources of income that could come in, whether it's projected income, things like, we're going to do a GoFundMe, or I have some corporate sponsors, or we're going to sell tickets. So we're going to get some income from that. But if there's no other source of income, it really made a lot of the reviewers uneasy, because they're like, we don't know where the money is coming from. Now, if you can make the project happen with 10 grand, then you don't have to show any other sources of income. So you say, these are my expenses are, $9,800. I'm asking for $9,800. They're going to be like, great. We're not worried if we fully fund this. Based on the expenses that can happen. So that's just a really important thing to kind of help people out with. If they have it's okay to have a bigger budget project, as long as they know where the money's coming from, because it's got to come from somewhere.
Another question I get a lot too is if they can use Funds for Artists, that $500 eligibility-based grant. And we discourage double dipping, but there's really no way for me to, check in and see if they're using supplies bought through Funds for Artists on this project. I'm not going to be that, I'm not going to be like a hawk watching stuff like that. But it's just discouraged to double dip. And that's true for all of our grant programs. So if project support touches one of your projects, unfortunately, you can't apply with that, and vice versa. All right, any questions? I'm going to move on to the next part. Cool. So let's talk about applicant eligibility. Individual artists or groups of artists. Remember, artists cannot apply on behalf of a business or a nonprofit organization. If someone sounds like they're talking more nonprofit, please point them to project support. I do oversee that program as well, and I'm happy to talk to them about that. Individuals must be working artists, age 18 and older, and they must be a Franklin County resident. You can also be part of a bordering county, but you must primarily exhibit, work, and perform or produce your artistic career here in Columbus. And lastly, you unfortunately cannot be a degree-seeking undergraduate student. There were a few people who were students in round 1 and have since graduated, and they're fully eligible to apply now in round 2. And you can only be awarded once per year per program. So all of the 49 artists that were awarded in round 1 are not eligible to reapply in round 2.
Hey, Kayla, can I just interrupt for a second to add a
Sure.
little more to that?
Sure.
I just want to explain to everybody why we don't allow artists that are seeking undergraduate degrees. And it's because of so many schools that are near. Our focus is to be helping that gap for the working artist. And so what would happen is all those CCAD and Ohio State kids would come in, and they're not having to live off of that necessarily, because they're still completing school. I mean, yes, it would be helping them, but we're trying to help those folks that are out there working and hustling. So that's the reason why that a lot of people ask that, and they get pretty frustrated, because you could be a working artist and be in college. We'd understand that.
Yeah.
But this is for post.
Yes.
And
Thank
during
you.
undergraduate career is one of the only times you really have a lot of access to financial aid, whether it's federal loans or grants or scholarships. So the other big eligibility thing that pops up, which Kayla hinted on earlier when she said artists have to apply and the artists have to be producing, is we do get some requests from producers. And what do I mean by producer? Is somebody who is like, I'm putting on this cool music festival, but they themselves are not an artist. So they plan to hire artists, or they plan to hire people, but they are not themselves an artist, and they are not creating work themselves. Those folks are not eligible. So this is really for artist projects that are like created by, thought of, like dreamed up by an artist, like a working artist, and like they're hopefully paying themselves for their own creation and anyone else involved in that project. It is not for like businesses who put on festivals or events. It's not for like a producer, even if, a agent or a booker or anything like that, a publisher, like those are all like great creative supports in our industry. But this is really like artist led for artists who have created this, and they are creating artwork as part of this.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for adding that.
I see there's a question.
Yeah.
Yes.
It says this project cannot have a nonprofit attached, but what method can they receive donations or assistance for the project, or can they? I would say most individuals or groups of individuals would use a platform like a GoFundMe, a PayPal. They might ask a nonprofit to receive donations on their behalf through a fiscal sponsor relationship. That is an option. So that would be, couple of ways that an artist may receive donations or sponsorships.
Cool. Was there any more questions?
I see Julie's typing.
Okay. My chat isn't like updating, so I can't see.
Okay. Well, it's acting weird.
I think, Kayla, just keep going and then I'll
Yeah.
read them out loud when they come. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Can a
Okay,
person who received an individual grant in round one be part of a group for in round two? Yes, like it, as long as they're not the applicant.
Yeah, so you can still work as part of a group. You just can't have, the funds routed to you and stuff like
Someone
that.
could hire you as part
Somebody
of the project,
hires you,
essentially.
they're paying you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Cool. All right. Now we're going to talk about project eligibility. So eligible projects are created and led by an artist or group of artists that involve the creation of art and meets the following criteria. So Franklin County, your project must take place in Franklin County. I had a couple people ask if they can use the funds to travel or to tour. And the answer is yes. I'm not going to take away, an opportunity or a resource that might be outside of Franklin County. But we do ask that a majority of the grant is being spent on and dedicated to Franklin County and Columbus-based production. So, when you think about how you're allocating your funding, just make sure that the larger portion of it stays here. We do expect some of these projects to be shared far and wide, whether it's an album or film festivals that you might want to apply to. So it's totally okay to do things like that. What's important is to ask yourself, how am I uplifting my own local artistic community through this project? And remember that these funds do come from taxpayer dollars. So please encourage folks to think about how they can involve other artists and collaborators, organizations, and businesses local to Columbus. The payment eligibility, so how are you engaging with local artists and how many artists will be paid? Artists must be paid through this grant, whether it's you as an individual working on a solo project, or maybe you're hiring artists to work on it with you. We really just want to see how artists are being financially supported. We don't want any of you to be dipping into personal funds or, swiping any credit cards. This grant is here to do that and to help you move this project along. And I'm speaking from personal experience here, but I do think that as artists, sometimes we miss the point to pay ourselves because we really want to see a project happen. And maybe someone doesn't have the budget or the rate that we are requiring. And in a lot of instances, we might be willing to lessen our rates or even bypass payment. So I strongly encourage artists to pay themselves for their time on these projects. And you can establish a rate via your research. But unfortunately, I can't make a suggestion as to what you should pay yourself because what might work for one artist might not for another. So that was another question I got a lot was how much should I pay myself? How much is too much? How much is too little? And I really can't answer that for you, but I encourage you to maybe talk to other artists at our writing sessions, talk to your artist friends and just kind of see how they come up with the amounts for themselves as well.
One thing I suggest for that is thinking about if somebody else called you up and said, I want to hire you for this project, how much would you charge them? What would be that rate? So I think sometimes we shortchange ourselves when we're pitching the project, like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I can't even ask for $100. But like, again, if someone hired you to do this work, how much would you charge an outside person? And thinking about that being your going rate.
And then the third eligibility component is that defined end result. So we left the project eligibility intentionally broad, and really the main requirement is that the project must end with an art experience that the public can attend or enjoy or digest somehow. This does not have to be an event, though. It does not have to be a large event at all. It should just be what makes sense for the project. So there's been some confusion about this, and I really want to emphasize that it can look like a bunch of different things. So an end result can take shape in the form of a performance, an exhibition, an installation. Maybe you want to host a festival. It can be a locally produced film or TV series, published works, recordings, just art experiences in general. But you want to think about what might be the most compelling version of the end result for your project. So community reviewers will be selecting projects kind of based on what they want to see out in the community. So I encourage you to tell artists to ask themselves, what would you want to see as a member of the public, as an arts appreciator, and as someone who is also in the same arts community? Applicants should be thinking things like, why this project right now in Columbus? Who does this project serve? Whose story is being told? Does my project demonstrate artistic, community, and/or cultural value? Do we have any questions about project eligibility or that defined end result? I think some applicants in round one thought that there had to be a very large gathering for it. But if you publish a book, that book is going to go out to the public and the public will be able to read it. So that does count as an end result.
Yeah, I think this was something when you talked about when Kayla talked about will the public want to see this? I think some artists were worried, especially if they do maybe experimental art or avant-garde art, something that maybe feels a little less accessible to the public, that they were gonna have to water their art down. And that is not true. In fact, what we saw from community reviewers is they really did their research. They looked into things, even if they didn't have expertise in one certain area of art. They were very inspired by those projects that were experimental, that were out, of the realm. Not saying it has to be, but you don't have to encourage folks to change their art or change their project to try to fit some kind of magic community, feel good kind of project. There are some concerns if it's not a party, it's not going to seem exciting, or if there's not free food or something like that. And really, over the 49 that were selected, we saw a wide range from solo projects that were very introspective to big community events that maybe did have, kind of a big gathering kind of thing. So the best thing I can say to folks is try to be true to yourself as much, and not worry about some magic formula for the community reviewers, because they were very, very thoughtful. And thank you for those folks who are in this room who also served as a community reviewer and got to have that experience.
All right, so this is the timeline for round two. Please write this down or add it to your calendars. August 1st is the opening and August 30th is the closing. Applicants will have 1 month to complete their application and ask me any questions in the meantime. I will not be doing draft reviews. However, I will be hosting a live virtual workshop on July 29th that is going to be in some future slides as well. And then a few grant application work sessions on 3 different dates in August. So I'll have this information at the end of the presentation, and it's also on our workshops page on gcac.org. If folks can't make the upcoming live workshop, I will record that and it will be publicly uploaded to GCAC's YouTube page. And then we do have Community Grant Review Day on September 28th. It's not included in this timeline here, but we'll talk about that more in the next couple slides. Applicants will then be notified by me at the latest on October 31st. So could be a trick or a treat. It's Halloween, you never know what you're going to get, but October 31st is the last date that you might hear from me. Hopefully it could be a little bit earlier depending on how things move along throughout that month. And then awardees will have until December 31st, 2025 to complete their project. So you have that full year to work on this project. And then the final report is due 30 days following the project end date, as noted in their application. So the earliest they can start is November 1st. But payments do sometimes take up to 4 weeks to be processed. So that's something that we do want to highlight as they're applying, is to make sure they give themselves some room to actually receive the funds. And then the project has to be completed by December 31st of 2025. If anything changes throughout the process regarding their project start or end dates, they will need to reach out to me or to Ariel at grants@gcac.org. We are accepting tentative plans, so I do expect some things to change over the course of a year. We just appreciate being notified as soon as possible so that we can note that in their applications and just kind of stay in the loop and be able to accurately reference their application and notes when we go to review the final report. So this is the application portal. It's gcac.smartsimple.com. From the guidelines, you can find it underneath the staff contact photo, that brown button, or the application portal at the top right. It's where they will apply for any and every grant that we offer. So if you received a Funds for Artists grant from us before, or a mural grant or something like that, you will already have a login. You will not need to register every time that you apply. And then this is what that homepage looks like. So once you're in the portal, you'll log in as usual or register and make a new account if they've never applied before. Please make sure that they know to make sure their information is correct. So when I'm looking at the portal from the internal side, if I need to contact someone, I'm going to go off of what they have in their Smart Simple account. So this means that their name, preferred pronouns, preferred names, artistic disciplines, email, phone, applications, all of that should be up to date so that I'm able to communicate with the applicant. And then once we're logged in, this is what the dashboard looks like. From this page, you can also change your password, you can update your profile, you can fill out contracts and your final report. And then to change your password and see more options, you can click on your initial at the top right corner to see a drop-down menu come down. So to access the artist projects application, there's a little acorn there that says grant and fellowship opportunities. They will click this to see the applications that are currently in an open cycle. So if they click on this right now, they will not see artist projects available to them. But August 1st, they will see it there. So it's not going to be included in the portal until the applications are actually open. But if they do want to see, what information they need, then you should point them to the guidelines on gcac.org. Once we've clicked on grant and fellowship opportunities, this pop-up screen will come up. And then to begin your application, you just select the program that you want and you click on Apply Now. Also, when you click on Apply Now and you start an application, if they try to log in again and do it from this grant and fellowship opportunities window, it will tell them that an application is already started. And that's when I usually have to tell people just scroll down a little bit and there's something that says applications/forms in progress. And they can continue working on it from there. But if they try and start an application that they've already started, they'll get that error message. And sometimes people, freak out and they're like, why can't I apply? Just tell them scroll down a little bit and they'll see it there. So I'm always happy to help with that. And, you can take a screenshot and send it to someone, whatever you need to do. Once we click on Apply Now, the application screen will pop up. And you'll notice at the top left, it says Calvin and Hobbes. That's just because that's our test profile. It will actually say new application until you click on Save Draft at the bottom. So I encourage you, once you open this and you know for sure that you're going to be applying, just go ahead and click on Save Draft to start and save the application in your name. And then as you move through each tab, you will continue to click on Save Draft just to save your work as you're filling out the application. So it's pretty easy to lose progress if you forget to do this and you're moving through the tabs and then maybe you close one out or you have one open in another tab. So I encourage people just one tab at a time and save draft as you go. All of the application questions are currently on our website. If people want to start working, they can also put that in a Word document and then just copy and paste their answers once the application is open. Keeping it in a separate Word document is also just a great way to ensure that your work is backed up so you're not having to, retype long answers and lose information and stuff like that if you do forget to save draft. But clicking Save Draft will put it in your name and then we'll see it on our end as a draft application. Once you get to the budget tab, you're going to look out for the gray instructional boxes. This will help guide the applicant as they enter budget information. So they'll click on that circled brown button that says add/update budget. And they should be thinking about all of their costs related to the project from start to finish. So we mentioned venue rentals, marketing costs, print materials, contractors, insurance, supplies, artist fees. And then this is also where they will be asked to note additional funding sources within their budget if their project goes over the max award amount. So once we click on that button, you'll get a pop-up screen. It's an entirely different tab than the application. So this is when you'll have two tabs open at once. You will add a line by clicking on the plus button for each expense that you have. So all of your costs estimated based on your research will be entered here. If you generate income for your project, such as ticket or merch sales, sponsorships, or donations, you will enter that in the income source section. It's not a requirement, as we mentioned, to have a source outside of grant funds. And then if you are awarded, we also highly encourage you to track spending via a Word document or spreadsheet, so that when you fill out your final report, we can see, the actuals for your project versus the proposed expenses. And then applicants will not be required to keep receipts for this grant. So, in the past, Funds for Artists, we did ask for receipts with artist projects. We are not going to require those, but we do want to see that there is some sort of financial tracking there. And I think it will help them in the long run as well. The next tab is the upload section. This is where they will upload their artist resume, and we're only going to accept it in PDF format only. I believe we have it set up so that Smart Simple actually will not accept any other file format. So they will be also required to upload work samples. In round one, this was optional. In round two, we are making it mandatory. A lot of the reviewer feedback that we got is, the application looks great, but being able to see the work that is partnering it would be even better. So some people did upload that and some people didn't. And round two, it's going to be mandatory. So aside from the work samples, you will also have an option to include additional materials that may support your application. So optional ones can look like links to other websites or materials, past project photos, publicity articles, maybe it's an artist statement or a letter of support from a collaborator or a partner, any additional project plans that you might want to include. We just ask that files are short and sweet and that they don't take a grant reviewer more than 5 minutes to review. So keep in mind that our community reviewers are reading a couple different applications, like 4 to 5. So we want to be mindful of our review time for them. You could have a grant reader who's like, I want to read every single thing that this person uploaded. And then another person might be, I'm just reading, the requirements and not the optional section. It really just depends on that individual's time that they're allotting to it. But filmmakers, go ahead.
Oh, this is important this round. We said that in last round, but we didn't really hammer it in. And some people uploaded like 80 pages of supplemental materials, including like past articles from 10 years ago and like pictures of some exhibit plus like a letter of recommendation. And it was great. It was very comprehensive, but those are going to be automatically disqualified this round. If you imagine like probably 300 to 400 of these are coming in, no one is going to be able to read 400, 4,000 essentially pages or more. So essentially, just encourage folks to think about like what helps tell this story. Like a good example, if you have like a detailed breakdown of a budget, maybe a little bit more than the simple budget pop out because you've been planning this, that might be helpful. If you have like a little list of all the artists involved, maybe their bios, like if you think it's like something that will complement this, they don't need to know anybody's life story or every good piece of press that you've ever had. And so that's going to be really important because now we've said in the guidelines and we're saying it in Smart Simple, we will automatically disqualify excessive lengths. So things that go over, 10 pages or whatnot, with the few exceptions. If it's something like, I think Kayla was just about to talk about film. Most filmmakers include like a slide deck. Those typically are maybe have a lot of pages, but it's like mostly visual and you're just like kind of flipping through them very quickly to get like the impression of the film. And though that kind of thing where someone could like flip through it like a little flip book without heavy reading or heavy like having to watch an hour video as a supplemental material would be helpful.
Yeah, so if you crash my computer, you will be disqualified. So please don't do that. A lot of filmmakers included like a link to a trailer as well, and you can include that just as a link within a PDF. That's another option too.
If anyone asked about why we made the work samples mandatory, not only did the reviewers ask for it, but also we found that those who included their own work samples tended to score higher because the reviewers just had more information about them. And so rather than make it optional and like let people guess like, oh, should I include this, should not, we're like going to put everyone on that level playing field of like your own personal work samples, you know, to demonstrate your artistry since it's your creative project, are going to be in there. And so everyone will have that chance to show just how awesome they are.
And then on the left-hand side of the application, you will see where it says notes. So if you need to note something in your application, you know, you can always email me or grants@gcac.org, but including it here, we do get notified and I'm able to go in and see it and respond that way. You basically just click on notes on the left-hand side and then the plus sign to create a new note. And then underneath type, you'll put note to council. And then in the body, just go ahead and type whatever note you need to leave and then click save at the very bottom of the page. And then the last tab in the application is certification. This is where you will just tick all the boxes and read through the information. And then you'll click on submit application to complete your application. This certifies that you're a resident of Franklin County or a county bordering Franklin County, that you're not a high school or degree seeking undergrad, and that you understand that this grant is considered taxable income. So this is true for all of our grants that are over 600. If you receive more than 600 or more from us, you will be mailed a 1099 for that following tax season. If you accidentally submit it before you're done, you will have to reach out to me or grants@gcac.org so we can reset it to draft status for you. So once you press submit application, it comes into us and you can no longer edit it. But depending on how close you are to that deadline, we'll be able to fix that for you. All right, so any questions about the application process before we move on to like reviewing and scoring?
The only other tiny changes to the application we're making is we had asked as part of a narrative question how many artists were going to be paid, as well as some questions. We've actually broken that out. We're just going to have like a little tiny numerical box that says how many artists are being paid, including yourself. So if it's a solo project, it would be one, myself. If it was a group project, that's just kind of an estimate. That just helps us for data tracking and we don't have to search for it in a narrative. We're also going to ask folks if it's a solo project or not. That's for a couple of reasons. Some artists felt that maybe solo projects weren't receiving the kind of attention that they deserved as part of this. So we are looking at different ways of highlighting that in the community review process. So that just helps us distinguish which ones are solo projects and which ones are group projects, so that again, leveling that playing field.
All right, so applications that move forward to Community Review Day will be scored out of 40 total points. So there's 10 points to each of these categories, 0 being the lowest possible score, and 10 being the highest, most excellent rating. The first one is a compelling project with arts at the core. So those are questions like, why this project? Why in Columbus? Why right now? Does this project demonstrate artistic, community, and or cultural value? And also, is this an innovative project? So how does your project stand out from maybe what you've done in the past or maybe what Columbus has seen before? Next one is creativity and artistic concept. So this is the applicant's vision and goals. Do those indicate a commitment to a quality project? Does this show risk-taking or innovation? Is this a project that you've seen before? Are local artists being engaged? What makes you excited about the project? And then evidence of a solid plan for completion. This is where we'll look at the project timeline. So is it outlined? Is it realistic? Is it well thought out? Remember, tentative plans are okay, but did the applicant make effort to research as much as possible? Have they thought of alternatives? If, like, let's say a venue falls through, like, where else would they go? And then also, are we confident in the applicant's ability to carry out the project? So what does the artist experience look like? Who else are they working with? And is their project budget reasonable? So this is where I had questions about travel and touring. If someone sees that 8,000 out of 10,000 is being taken out of Ohio, that's not necessarily considered a reasonable project budget. So community reviewers will be looking at all of that in order to come up with their score for this. And the last one is benefit to the public who will engage with the completed project. So is there a broad reaching benefit to the community, and are they going to be able to engage with the art in some way? How is it being promoted in the community? And does it also align with GCAC's diversity, equity, and inclusion statement? Community reviewers do receive like a scoring card with all of these prompts on there. And we have our diversity, equity, inclusion statement on there as well. So they can reference this as they're going through your application. We don't have the like side questions included in the guidelines, but this part here is visible to the applicant. So they know it's going to be out of 40 total points, and they know what those 4 categories are. They just can't really see exactly what kind of things we're looking for. And I think that's
Although we
just...
will be sharing them this round. We just didn't
Oh, okay,
have them
cool.
for first round,
Okay.
just because the community reviewers have already seen them, and that gives an unfair advantage to artists who participated in the first one. So I dropped the link to the PDF in our chat, and I will also email it out, but we'll post it when we're updating the final guidelines. But these are just really questions to kind of dive a little deeper into this, because a lot of people did ask, like, what does compelling project mean? What does, benefit to the public? So those are defined a little bit more in here. One thing I always say is there's no perfect rubric. There's no perfect way to score or determine who gets money. And this is really, these 4 categories were kind of based on alignment with GCAC mission, vision, and values set by our board, to think about not just, this isn't just an excellence award. Like, we expect that there's going to be a lot of artistic excellence in here, but they, community reviewers aren't just looking and being like, I think this person's the best artist. They're kind of taking the whole project into consideration. And the biggest thing I can say about compelling project is, again, you don't have to try to like fancy it up for this, but I would say one example, we got a lot of music applications, which was excellent, but a lot of them were bands that were just like, I'm just producing my next album, play for it, please. That was it. And now I understand they need to produce their next album and they would like funding for it. But what is exciting about this album? How does it help the band's trajectory or the musician's career? Why is this going to make an impact on our public? Thinking about that story beyond like, this is something I always do. Like, I produce an album every 2 years and I'm just producing one and I want it funded this year instead of other years. So thinking about like, what makes this project special? What makes this project maybe different? What brings us to the next level? Again, like, why this project right now? And if you can tell that story, it's not to say that like a band that is producing an album will not be funded, because I did actually see some of those get funded. But the ones who were very short and sweet were just like, hey, fund my next album. Then we're not selected likely. So that was something when we talk about the compelling project is just thinking about why this project, and what might tell that story to someone who doesn't not know you or your music or your art or your whatever it is that you're doing. So
Any questions on scoring?
probably the biggest one that we get questions about. So, you know, once we get this, you can print out this PDF that I sent. I'll include the link to it as well. But we will publish it, you know, just encourage folks to look at that and just think it through. Another thing that we encourage that not everyone wants to do, but is to have other people look at your application. That's one of the reasons we have writing sessions and other group sessions, is because if you think about the community reading it, Kayla could give her opinion or I could give my opinion, but kind of a broad perspective of it. Ask a friend to glance at your application, ask somebody else, do they understand what you're doing? Can they repeat it back to you? Clarity is probably like one of the hardest parts of grant writing. It's less about like flowery language and trying to like make everything sound good as much as like, can someone read this and then say, oh, I know what they're doing. I know what I could experience when at the end product. I know what's going to happen. You know, maybe I don't understand the art completely. Like, again, they don't have to be an expert, but they understand, here's a timeline, here's steps. The end product is an event, it's a published book, it's a new website, it's an album, it's a whatever, that they, you know, the public eventually will get to enjoy.
One last thing, and it's probably, I'm gonna have to jump off here for a call, but I wanted to say too, as a reminder, we have computers here that people can come to use. We don't always have staff available to sit with them, but if they make an appointment, say they aren't comfortable with technology or spelling is not something they're comfortable with or writing, we can make that happen. We want to reduce those barriers. So if you have folks who need special accommodations of any kind, please just send an email to us at grants@gcac.org and we'll make plans for that.
We'll also have some additional laptops at the writing sessions too. So if someone wants to come and work on it digitally, there's about 3 or 4 that are just first come, first serve at the sessions. All right, so after artists submit their applications, our team here at GCAC does review each one just to make sure it's complete and that it's eligible. So we are not scoring or evaluating the applications at all. In round 1, GCAC piloted the community grant making process, which invited the public to participate in the review and evaluation of applications. This is part of our ongoing equity work here at GCAC, and by adopting participatory/community grant making, we are joining those who've been using this process around the globe for decades. So community grant making is a tool that's used to shift power dynamics. It's transparent, it involves community, and ultimately it just demystifies the grant making process. So you'll see this little chart here. We do have this on our website as well, but if anyone's, you know, confused about community review or anything, it is linked within the guidelines and on our website, and they can read about it and be linked to other resources that talk about community grant making.
And we would love for them to join us.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, grants can be very scary and like daunting to apply for. So it's our hope that by extending the review process to those outside of GCAC's initial funding environment, we then are able to reach those that are sometimes, you know, excluded from traditional or academic art and funding institutions. So virtually anyone can sign up. Even applicants can sign up as well. They're encouraged to, but they will not be sat at the same table that their application is being reviewed at. So GCAC does train and guide the logistics of the process, just so that we can make sure the day is as smooth sailing as possible. The first one was hosted at the Ohio History Connection, and we had a really great turnout, but one major point of feedback was the acoustics in the room. It was a bit too echoey, and, you know, when everyone's talking and are in discussion with one another, it can be kind of overstimulating, of course. So for round 2, we're actually going to have it at Columbus State Community College, and parking and lunch will be provided. I've done community grant making with the Women's Fund and also with United Way. And it's really just a great way to not only meet people in the community, but also just learn more about grant writing in general, and how funders make their decisions. So, I'm new to GCAC. I've only been here for a year. I've learned a lot in this past year. And part of that has come from being involved in helping other organizations do their community review process. So even if an artist doesn't want to apply in round two, maybe signing up as a community reviewer could be helpful to them just so they can gain experience for any future application that they might want to work on.
We're going to start recruiting community reviewers on August 5th. So we want to get this application open first. And then on this website where you see the QR code, or just on our website, gcc.org/community review process, that is where we'll take those interest forms again. Unfortunately, if you want to participate, we're going to have to make you fill another interest form out. It's just easier for data collection to have you fill it out every time. But it will be short and sweet, and we will also be encouraging navigators to serve as table captains if you're willing, and we'll send those follow-up information. But if you're available on September 28th, I know that the folks who did participate had a great time. We had almost universal positive feedback about the process, about the community members, about the balance at the tables. We plan to make this process better and better every time, so we hope we'll learn a little bit. Gabrielle Burton asked where at Columbus State. It's going to be at Mitchell Hall, upstairs in rooms 216, A, B, and C, a huge room. So we're going to spread people out as far as we can so that there's just a little bit more space to mix and mingle. And we'll, of course, be sending out all the information as we go. But if you're available, we would love to see you. Also, as you're talking to artists, if anyone is actually really unsure about this community review process, or don't really like it, or maybe don't even want to apply because of it, or maybe I would encourage them to participate. A lot of artists participated in round one, and it was a really fantastic experience. I think people really got to see a window into this process, and they also felt really encouraged seeing how serious the community took this, whether they were artists themselves, arts admins, art supporters, just like community Columbus loving folks. And that was just really beautiful and really encouraging. And so I want to encourage folks to be able to see that. You can see Lori in this picture, actually, down here from Ohio History Connection. So please keep the date if you can. It's not mandatory, but we would love to have you, and we love any artist that is curious to participate and just see how hard it is to give out money. It sounds so glamorous, but when it comes down to it, it's very challenging.
I'm very excited.
Siri asked if the Artist Project grants are continuing. Yes, the plan is to continue it right now indefinitely. Most of the programs that we launch, the hope is that they are great and they continue. Some of them we evolve, but this one seems to be going pretty well. I don't want to speak out of turn, but we're pretty happy with how this is going. The community response, we might do, some tweaks and just improve based on feedback from artists. And you guys will be a part of that as we continue to survey you and find out what the community feedback is for that. But yes, I anticipate this will continue until we come up with something even better.
I'm excited for it. The first one was a really good day. And it being over at 2, you get to go throughout the rest of your day with a good start to your weekend. So hope to see some of you there for sure. After community review day, once all those scores come back to us and artists hear back, this is when they will be approved of their grant and receive a contract or grant agreement that specifies the terms of the grant. And that's going to be available in the online application portal in Smart Simple. So the first payment is going to be 90% of their grant, and that comes after they've signed and turned in the grant agreement. And then a remaining 10% will be paid following the approval of the final report. So when grantees receive their funds, they do have the option to work with a fiscal sponsor if they would like to. It's not mandatory. But filmmakers, for example, they're receiving up to $25,000. If they're going to be working with a fiscal sponsor, they will need to reach out to us at grants@gcac.org. And we will create a separate grant agreement for that fiscal sponsor that they will have to go in and sign before we can release the funds to their sponsor. So after the final report is turned in, the remaining 10% will be paid, and that is due 30 days following their project end date. And we're going to go off the date that they've noted in their application. You will also be required to do the publicity/donor acknowledgement. And that's really just a social media shout out. So you can tag GCAC and Columbus Makes Art pages that we have on Facebook, X, and Instagram. And then you can also thank public funders, whether it's a letter or an email to the Columbus mayor, city council members, or Franklin County commissioners. And then we have all of this information, as well as I believe some mailing addresses in Appendix A, which is on our website. And then it's also going to be linked in that grant agreement. About a month or so after they received their award email, I do follow up with this information again, just as a little reminder. But they can always view that contract and grant agreement in their application. So this is the timeline one more time. Applications open August 1st. There's the deadline there, the notification date, when they can start and must complete their projects, and then their final report. The upcoming workshops that we do have, the first one is live and virtual, and it's on July 29th from 3:30 to 5 p.m. And then the in-person grant application writing sessions start in August. The first one is on August 6th at lunchtime from 12 to 1:30. We will have some snacks and drinks provided, as well as like a little giveaway at each session. So that's a really good incentive to have people come out and start working with one another. The next one is Monday, August 12th at the same time from 12 to 1:30. And then for folks who can't make the daytime sessions, we do have an evening session from 5:30 to 7:00 p.m. on August 21st. We'll probably order a pizza or something like that so that folks that might be expecting dinner, they'll have that there and you can come and eat and talk to one another and work on your application. The QR code here is for our newsletter. Ariel sends out the newsletter twice a month, and that should have information not only on artist projects, but just anything, high level that's going on here at GCAC, important news, other workshops, other opportunities that you might be interested in. So if you're not already subscribed to the newsletter, I encourage you to do that. This next page here is just a little bit more information on the writing sessions. We do have this on our website, gcac.org, for artists/workshops. It would be really great to have some navigators come and help out at these sessions. A lot of people show up and it usually runs a little bit over because it's just me or one other person talking to everyone. In round one, I tried to go from person to person and talk to everyone individually. I don't know if I will have the capacity for that in round two. So any helping hands that we could have would be really great. Basically, I'm going to set up the large conference room that we've met in before, and I'm thinking of doing like little group tables so that there's group discussion that's encouraged. I'll have some high-level points up on the screen, and then I'll kind of just be floating around the room, helping people, answering any weird questions that maybe we haven't addressed yet.
So
So
for
if you
some
feel
of you guys who reached out to me at festival time or had to miss another mandatory meeting, this is a great way to make up that missed mandatory meeting. We would love to have you participate. There is 3 sessions at different times. I dropped the link into the Sign Up Geniuses on there. So if the first one is August 6th at noon, the next one's August 12th at noon, and the next one's August 21st at 5:30 p.m. So there, pick 1 or 2 if you're available. Some of you did show up for the writing sessions in round 1. It was very, very helpful. We will have name tags for any navigators who are there because you got a little bit more of the inside scoop. We hope that you can answer maybe some general questions like like Kayla said, people are just like lining up to talk to her. And we really want to encourage people to mix and mingle and ask, you know, kind of the general questions, get pointed to the guidelines and guided as much as possible. So I'm going to follow up with all of these signups as well, and just encourage, if you're free, this would be a super, super helpful way to contribute as a navigator. And we'll have special name tags for you.
Gold shiny name tags, so they're cool. But yeah, these writing sessions are just very strongly encouraged. I think that they helped a lot of people out. And like Allison mentioned earlier, we do have a computer available. You can come use it during one of these sessions. We'll have laptops. Pretty much everything you need to work on your application we'll have here. Some people brought printouts with their information that I kind of just, you know, glanced over and called out anything that stood out to me. So people approach it in different ways, but if you really understand artist projects, I think it would be a big help to have you there. And that's it. So if you have any questions, you know where to find us. The website and the application portals here on the end screen. I think we might have time for some questions if anyone has any that they want to ask. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. That way, you know, if anyone wants to ask questions off of recording.
I have a couple things that come up a lot is can I submit the same application as round one? That will come up if they weren't selected. Yes, they can. And we can roll it over for them. However, they have to ask us because it will not happen automatically. And because we've changed a couple of the questions, we've tweaked them just a little bit, they will have to go back in and answer them. So it's not an automatic process, but let's just say they submitted something in round one and they're like, I still feel great about this project. Maybe I just didn't make it. I want to submit it. Maybe I'm going to change one thing or the other. Do they have to rewrite it? No, they do not. But they do have to reach out to us at grants@GCAC and say, can you roll this over to round two? And they will have to hit the submit button themselves. So just rolling it over to round two does not mean it's submitted. And that's going to be a really important thing to drive home to folks. We can roll it over so they don't have to rewrite everything, but because things have changed, they're going to have to do a few of those items. So that is a big question that will come up, or they want to do something similar. Yes, they're probably going to get different reviewers. So it doesn't hurt them if they are in love with the round one project to maybe give it a quick shine and think about it and think about the timeline. If it still works, tweak it a little bit and resubmit it. It's possible that, you know, they just missed the cutoff of scores of not getting selected. You know, it's kind of hard to gauge that, but a fresh look at it would never hurt anyone, and just make sure it's as compelling and thorough as possible. One other thing that comes up that sadly has come up, and it's not always grant related, but with groups, the person who's applying is going to be signing the contract with us. So I'm just going to use Kayla and Ariel in our office as examples. So let's say Kayla and Ariel didn't work here and they were doing a project together. And Kayla applies and she is funded. And as far as we're concerned, Kayla is the person running this project. If her and Ariel have a huge blow up and they decide they do not work together anymore, Ariel doesn't actually have any recourse. Kayla is the person we're contracted with. Kayla will have to say, hey, you know, my project changed because of this proposal. Because of that, we've had some artists get in some, you know, messy legal situations, not necessarily grant related, but maybe they were co-producing something and they didn't have any written contracts. One thing I highly recommend everyone do, if you're producing a project and you're hiring someone, have a basic, simple contract with those folks. It just like lines it up for what you both can expect. And then that way, let's say Kayla's the jerk and she just fires Ariel out of for no reason. And he's just like, what happened, man? I'm the coolest guy ever. He can say, I have a contract that says you still owe me this much money. I get that you don't want me to work on this project, but you got to pay me. So that is just something, sadly, in this day and age, how we live in it, we are not going to get involved in any of that business. We are going to hold whoever submits and signs the contract accountable for this, though. So let's just say if Kayla can't do the project anymore because the group broke up, she gets some of the money back. She can, if the project can be tweaked with kind of new artists, we're going to say okay because she is the one who submitted and signed the contract. So that's just a kind of, a little bit of a messy beast with those group projects. So just another reason it always helps to have things in writing between folks, and we're not trying to discourage group projects, but just thinking about even best friends get into, unfortunately, issues. And so it's just something I want people to be aware of. It is too hard for us to manage, contracts with 5 or 6 different people through programs like this. So one person, as far as GCAC is concerned, it is their project. Even if it's co-produced, even if they write in the application, me and Ariel, Kayla and Ariel are doing this. If Kayla signs it, Kayla's the person we're going to hold accountable. So that's something, people have questions about groups in that way. They can ask us, but really, who's the most responsible? Who's going to fulfill this with the contract? And then anybody who else is getting paid, even if you have to Google a basic contract template, that's better than nothing. You get something in writing. The last one that we get a lot of questions about is they're like, hey, the project guidelines and eligibility is like a little vague. These questions are fairly vague. Like, what's the end result? That is actually very purposeful, because some programs we've had in the past have been like, you have to do this, this, and this. It has to be this kind of event. It has to be this. The idea behind artist projects is we get artists all the time who tell us amazing ideas they have. And sometimes in the past, we hadn't had a program that maybe fit this amazing idea. So the idea that it's vague is to not stifle creativity. We want to say, do you have an idea? Do you have a project that's your own creation as an artist? And it has some kind of end result. Whether that's an event, whether that's a publication, an album, something, some kind of creation that happens, and the end result that the public can enjoy in some way, whether they can purchase that art, they can go to an event and view that art, they can go to a performance, they can see, maybe it's a film creation, like, will the public see it someday, whether it's by purchase or by viewing an event in many different ways, but there is an end result. That is a really important part of this, is like, you're creating something and you can name whatever that end result is. It's not a process based. So for example, someone we had to disqualify was like, I'm just like going to a residency to like grow and learn. There is no end result in that, unless they said, I'm going to a residency, I'm creating art, and my end result is I'm publishing, I am putting to work. And that's what we really care about, is that end result, that there is something's going to come out of whatever the project is at the end. But the vagueness is purposeful so that people can dream very big.
Mm-hmm. I just had a comment as a navigator and questions that I get, as well as having gone through the application process. It's real important, I think, for us to stress to them to get the information to Kayla early, because you don't realize
Yes.
how long it takes. You don't realize how long it takes until you're doing it. And if you're going from the perspective that they don't know you and you have to talk to them like they've never heard of you and don't know what you're doing, it takes time to do it, leave it for a second, go back and look at it, because you'll think of something else, have somebody read it. So you just probably want to tell them that it's better to not tell them you have a month. I tell people you have about 2.5 weeks to do it, is what I tell people, because then you still have time to tweak, and Kayla may have some ideas, Mackenzie may have something for them to think about, and you always think of something else or something else you want to add in there. So it's just important for us to tell them to give themselves time, because some people think it's like the $500 grant, and I'm like, no, it is not that.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot, and I'm not gonna lie, it is a lot. But that's why you have a nice amount of time, so that you can just do it, a day, and just help them find increments of times to do it. Like, hey, do 2 sections a week or something like that, or in these 2 days, just so that they can get their stuff to her on sale on time, and then she can give them what they need, the feedback back. That's it.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Yeah. We don't do official draft reviews on these, but if you have a specific question, like,
Yeah, that takes a lot of pressure off me. I don't want to make, all of these decisions, of course. But, if someone reaches out and they're just like, does this look done? Does this look complete? I'm happy to look through and say, well, I actually had these questions pop up, but, that might be something the community reviewer might or might not have pop up. So I kind of just tell people, think about it in this way or think about it in that way. I don't necessarily give direct, solid answers as to how they should be answering questions, of course. So,
and if you have an upcoming one of the August virtual chat with the navigator, you better believe you are going to get only artist project questions. We had a couple of you had a summer session where no one showed up at all because, they were done with round 1. Everyone's like in summer mode. But in our first round, those folks who had those chat with the navigator dates during the application process, they were pretty busy in those virtual. I will send you a little note before that, but it's worth just having the link to the guidelines and the link to, once Kayla records the round 2 workshop video, just available so that you're prepared. You don't have to be the end all be all like on those calls. You can answer the questions, get them to those FAQs on the guideline page. You can also just say, hey, I don't know the answer. Do you want to let's email Kayla together. Let's just send her a quick note while we're on the call. Let's ask her.
Yeah. Cool.
Questions about you have for your own projects, questions you have for anything you've heard from artists, comments.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here.